Part 92. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 911. Chapter 911, Not Happy at All. When Fan Kinjao learned about this, everyone in the Guan family had already gone to the third prince's residence to discuss the wedding. Even if the daughter of the Guan family is newly married, it is still a continuation of the relationship for the royal family. The emperor can personally choose Guan Panur, which has given the Guan family and the third prince a great deal of face. As for the remaining trivial matters, it is not good. If you alert the court again, it will be arranged. As for Princess Pinglay being hit, the third prince's residence quickly concluded that she was a maid in the third prince's residence who had been secretly in love with King Pinglay. Therefore, because of her love and hatred, she spent her daily life accumulating. The cobblestones are paved on the road that Princess Hire must pass. By the time Bailey Rongs reported the matter, the maid had already been killed. In fact, even if no one died, since the matter has become such a mess, it would be difficult to cause a big stir. After all, neither King Pinglay nor Princess Pinglay would go to the third prince's mansion to deal with a little kid. The young maid raised an army to investigate the crime. Fan Kinjao had known the outcome of this matter for a long time, so he was not surprised. However, he was a little surprised when he heard that it was just Guan Panur marrying to the third prince's residence, and nothing else. With concubine Yu's temperament, since she knew that Fan Swinning was dancing happily under her nose, it was impossible for her to be soft-hearted. Now she just encouraged Guan Panur to marry to the third prince's mansion, which was a bit condescending. Then I think of Fan Swinning daring to do something blatantly. Fan Kinjao always felt as if he had missed something. But no matter what, Fan Kinjao is still very happy as long as he can make Fan Swinning unhappy. Fan Kinjao thought, well, Fan Swinning was indeed unhappy. I can't be happy at all. It was the maid serving at the side who looked at Fan Swinning's blue face and said, "Aunt Fan, you haven't eaten for several days. How will your body bear it if this goes on?" Fan Swinning sat silently on the bed, with only hatred left in her heart. How could she have any appetite? She planned what happened that day so perfectly that even Panda Fei didn't notice it. If Fan Kinjao hadn't disrupted the situation, how would it be Guan Panur's turn to marry into the third prince's mansion now? Thinking that she had lost to Fan Kinjao again, Fan Swinning reached out and swept the tray held by the maid to the ground. Bitch! Bitch! Fan Swinning was really mad. She had waited for such a long time, and finally there was no one else around the third prince. She thought that she would be able to stand side by side with the third prince naturally, but she never expected that the result would be like this. If I had known this earlier, I should not have agreed to concubine you to kill the third prince's concubine. Fan Swinning cursed indiscriminately, obviously on the verge of collapse. The maid was frightened to death when she heard these words. She didn't even care about the rules. She quickly stood up and covered Fan Swinning's mouth and said, "How could you say this, Aunt Fan? If others heard this, it would be a disaster. He's going to be beheaded." Although this maid has just been with Fan Swinning not long ago, she is already Fan Swinning's confidant. She helped with many things. Even when Fan Swinning secretly put medicine into the food of the third prince and concubine, she quietly helped cover it up. Now if this matter is publicized, she will also die. Fan Swinning gradually calmed down under the maid's worried gaze. Yes, since she chose to help concubine Yu at the beginning, there is no way for her to turn back now. Fortunately, concubine Yu only let Guan Panur in and did not embarrass her. This shows that concubine Yu also has the same intentions. Scrupulous. Thinking of this, Fan Swinning smiled. It's better to be wary. Even if concubine Yu sends people in, so what? As long as the third prince still faces me. Whether it is Fan Kinjao or Yu noble concubine, one day, she will ask for her money back one by one with interest. Fan Kinjao didn't know what Fan Swinning was thinking. Now she was stepping into the gate of Prince Pinglay's palace. Prince Pinglay heard that the crown princess had arrived, so he put down what he was doing and came to greet her in person. Seeing Fan Kinjao from a distance, he smiled and said, "Thanks to the crown princess for what happened last time. Speaking of which, if it weren't for the inconvenience of my legs and feet, I should have come to thank you early in the morning." Fan Kinjao also smiled, "That's all it should be. King Pinglay doesn't need to be polite. Even if everyone is standing on the same boat now, they have to close the door and live their own lives. If other people have helped such a big help, I don't know how to thank them." This is the first time that King Pinglay discovered Fan Kinjao. Being so humble, I didn't know what to say for a while. Fan Kinjao really didn't think about asking for any thanks, so he said a few more polite words to King Pinglay and headed towards the backyard. Yan Hanbei was undergoing confinement in the mansion, not to mention worrying about it. When he saw Fan Kinjao coming, he finally showed a smile. "This confinement is really tiring. I only eat and sleep all day long, and I'm still pregnant. It's hard to keep a child's feminine figure. If you continue to eat like this, even gods will turn into pigs." Fan Kinjao looked at the good-looking Yan Hanbei and said with a smile, "In days like this, no one else can ask for anything. It falls on you, but you are full of complaints. If other people hear this, but how will other people live their lives?" When Yan Hanbei heard this, he remembered the days when he had not enough to eat. "Speaking of which, if it weren't for you and His Royal Highness, the Prince, and I wouldn't know where we would be in the cool corner. Now you have saved our mother and daughter. One life, Kinjao, Since you know you owe me, you should take good care of yourself so that you can help me when I need you." Fan Kinjao sat down next to the bed and said jokingly. Yan Hanbei knew that Fan Kinjao was joking, but he still nodded seriously. "Kinjao, don't worry, if something really happens to you in the future, if I blink my eyes, it will be because I am not a human being." "Well, children can be taught." Fan Kinjao nodded seriously, "Just like a debt collector." Yan Hanbei looked at Fan Kinjao and couldn't help laughing. After the two of them had laughed, Yan Hanbei said, "Have you heard about the third prince's residence?" Fan Kinjao said, "Are you talking about Quan Panur's marriage renewal?" Yan Hanbei nodded, "I didn't expect that Pan Yulu had just closed her eyes, and someone took over her existence. How can we talk about being buried in peace? In fact, I still feel like it's like a dream. You said you are such a good person. How do you say it's gone?" Fan Kinjao sighed, "Everyone has his own destiny, and many things are beyond our control." Yan Hanbei also sighed, "If I knew better, I would have treated her better last time we met. They are all dying. I really didn't expect her illness to be so serious." In fact, Fan Kinjao did not expect that Pan Yulu's illness was really that serious. It's just that she couldn't tell Yan Hanbei this. After being hit at the third prince's residence last time, Yan Hanbei was obviously frightened by his careless attitude, and she didn't want her to be frightened again. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 912. Chapter 912 Return to Hyogyo Temple. However, after leaving the Pinglay Palace, Fan Kinjao was always thinking about Pan Yulu. After all, she had checked Pan Yulu's pulse condition. If she only looked at the pulse condition, there would be no problem for Pan Yulu to live for at least another few decades. "Miss, shall we go back home?" Ninghan asked while sitting in the carriage. Fan Kinjao was about to nod, but when he spoke, he remembered what Pan Yulu said to her that day, saying that he asked for a safe blessing at Hyogyo Temple. At that time, Fan Kinjao didn't think much about it, but now he thinks about it. "Think." Fan Kinjao finally said, "Go to Hyogyo Temple." Although Ninghan was surprised as to why the young lady wanted to go to Hyogyo Temple, she still turned around. The distance from the main city to the Hyogyo Temple was not very close. Almost half an hour later, Fan Kinjao vaguely saw the Hyogyo temple towering on the high mountain through the car window. It was already afternoon, and there were no more pilgrims going up the mountain to offer incense. After Fan Kinjao got off the carriage, he left Ningan waiting there, and walked up the steps in front of him step by step, holding up his skirt. As he got closer to the top of the mountain, the smell of burning in the Hyogyo temple became stronger and stronger. Fan Kinjao didn't like the smell, so he instinctively frowned. In other words, she even rejected the Buddha. If there really was a Buddha, there wouldn't be so many evil people in the world. To say that good deeds will be rewarded is just a false self-comfort for people. Since the donor does not believe in gods and Buddhas, why is he asking for trouble again? A familiar voice suddenly sounded not far away. Fan Kinjao stepped onto the last step and looked around, and saw Master Xingyun. I haven't seen you for a long time, but you still have that kind look on your face. Didn't I say that Buddha never despised anyone? Am I now despised by Buddha, which led Master Xingyun to block here and persuade me to go back home? Fan Kinjao looked at Master Xingyun and said. Master Xingyun smiled faintly, clasped his hands and said, the heart of Buddha can accommodate thousands of living beings in the world. As long as you wholeheartedly want to convert to Buddhism, Buddha will sincerely welcome you. Today, when I divined, I calculated that Miss Fan should be called now. The princess will arrive soon, so she has been waiting here early. Fan Kinjao didn't want to make any detours with Master Xingyun, he just wanted to finish the matter and leave quickly, saying, when the third princess was still alive, she went to the Hyogyo temple to ask for a blessing of peace. Unfortunately, she only took some time out recently. I don't know. Master Xingyun, can you lead me there to take a look? Master Xingyun nodded and made a gesture of invitation to Fan Kinjao. This is natural. Princess, please follow the monk's side. Fan Kinjao followed Master Xingyun all the way to the backyard of Hyogyo temple. He met many monks on the way, and they all greeted Fan Kinjao with great respect. After all, without Fan Kinjao's generosity, there would not be the green trees of Hyogyo temple now. Fan Kinjao used money to buy saplings in order to make Bailey Rongs bend over. But he didn't expect that those saplings would actually grow. Now he is even more surprised when he looks at them. Master Xingyun said, if there is a cause, there must be an effect, and if there is an effect, there must be a cause. Causes produce effects, and cause and effect are inevitable. Fan Kinjao. Let's just say, can we blame Buddha for everything? Master Xingyun saw Fan Kinjao's impatient expression and just smiled lightly. There are many things in the world that seem to be unreasonable, but in fact they are all caused by great causes and effects. Has the crown princess never thought about why the crown prince is now? Why is concubine standing here doing something she shouldn't be doing? Hearing these words, Fan Kinjao's heart sank unexpectedly. This time she was reborn, even she found it incredible. She would never mention this kind of thing to anyone, but for some reason, looking at Master Xingyun's eyes, she felt that Master Xingyun seemed to be interested in her. Everything is well understood. This feeling was very bad and made Fan Kinjao feel inexplicably flustered. Fortunately, Master Xingyun did not continue to say anything. He just led the way quietly. When he reached a courtyard, he stopped and said, the peace and blessing that the third prince's concubine prayed for the prince's concubine is here. I will not follow the princess into this temple. Thank you, Master Xingyun. Fan Kinjao nodded and walked towards the yard in front of him. But just when she took a few steps, she heard Master Xingyun's voice echoing again, all laws are empty, and cause and effect are not empty. If you do something against heaven, you will be punished by heaven. Fan Kinjao froze on the spot for a moment, feeling cold in his limbs. He suddenly turned around and looked behind him, only to find that Master Xingyun had already walked away. Did she just hear wrongly? Looking at Master Xingyun's back, Fan Kinjao waited for a long time before continuing to walk towards the courtyard. Pushing open the wooden door in front of me, A strong scent of sandalwood hit my face. Fan Kinjao stepped in and discovered that this room was filled with numerous peace blessings. When he looked carefully at the blessings of peace, he suddenly discovered that they were all written by one person, praying for peace for one person. Fan Kinjao had never believed in the talk of ghosts and gods, but now he was still a little touched when he looked at these blessings of peace. Of what kind of piety is required to write down so many blessings of peace? Think about it, the person who is blessed should be very important to the person who writes the talisman. It's a pity that these blessings of peace are not signed. Fan Kinjao looked at each piece carefully. The more he looked, the more familiar he felt, as if he had seen something like this somewhere. Before Fan Kinjao had time to think about it, he saw the blessing of peace left by Pan Yulu. Fan Kinjao looked at her name being written on the blessing of peace. She really didn't expect that Pan Yulu actually came to Hyogyo Temple to pray for peace and blessing for her. Fan Kinjao reached out and said ping and blessing, took it off and observed it carefully. Fan Kinjao didn't find anything different about the ping and blessing. It was just a piece of paper with a simple peace charm drawn on it and her name written on it. Fan Kinjao looked at the ping and fu in her hand and suddenly sneered. It seemed that she was really overthinking it. But just when she was thinking about putting ping and fu back to its original place, something fell out of it. Fan Kinjao picked it up and it turned out to be a letter. It is said to be a letter, but it is actually just a piece of rice paper sandwiched inside ping and fu. If ping and fu had not been taken out, he would not have discovered that there was anything hidden inside. Fan Kinjao used the candlelight in the room to open the rice paper, and Pan Yulu's handwriting was revealed bit by bit. When the content inside came into view bit by bit, Fan Kinjao's hands began to lose control. The ground trembled. This is end of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 913. Chapter 913, Death. If Pan Yulu hadn't really died, Fan Kinjao would never have believed everything written above. But the fact is that Pan Yulu is really dead. Died in his own house after knowing the truth of the matter. After Fan Kinjao read the last word in the letter, he felt his heart was both hot and cold. What makes her cold is that she finally understands why Fan Swinning is clamoring for Concubine Yu so much, but Concubine Yu still chooses to turn a blind eye. She understands even more why the Emperor indulges Bailey wrongs more and more without any limit. What made her hot was that she couldn't suppress the burning anger in her chest. Because she never thought that someone in this world could really do such a ridiculous thing. Fan Kinjao knew that the matter could not be delayed, so she turned around and walked out the door. She must inform Bailey Fengming of the matter as soon as possible, otherwise if she allowed the matter to spread, the consequences would be disastrous. But just when her feet were about to cross the threshold, her whole body suddenly became stiff, and then the familiar pain exploded from her heart, spreading completely uncontrollably throughout her body. Unable to bear the pain, Fan Kinjao instinctively fell to the ground and huddled on the cold ground. She could only breathe heavily to relieve the fatal pain. Feeling every inch of skin on his body was like being cut out by a knife, and feeling every inch of bone in his body like being scraped by a knife, Fan Kinjao suddenly understood that the so-called punishment from heaven was actually always there. Raising her eyes and looking towards the Buddha statue enshrined in the room, Fan Kinjao seemed to see the Buddha smiling at her in the haze, as if everything she did was under the control of the Buddha, and what he did to her God's punishment is a shackles that she cannot escape. Fan Kinjao knew very well that from the moment she opened her eyes, every step she took was going against nature. Maybe as long as she lived by nature, she would not suffer God's punishment. Maybe the pain in her body was reminding her that God's will cannot be violated. But she just wanted to go against nature. She has to repay all the debts she has owed. She will also make all those who owe her receive the punishment they deserve. If this is going against heaven, then she will go against heaven. Suffering from the pain of thousands of arrows piercing his heart, Fan Kinjao looked at the Buddha statue and showed a faint smile. Either he would take her life away, or he would watch her stabbing the world with his eyes. The severe pain made Fan Kinjao gradually lose consciousness, and his body became lighter. Fan Kinjao didn't know what she was seeing. The surroundings were filled with endless darkness, as if one abyss after another was opening its mouth to her. I don't know how long it took before Fan Kinjao gradually gained some consciousness. God's will is impossible to do, Your Highness. The Crown Prince acted against heaven in the first place. Why bother now? Master Xingyun, there is no need to say anything, I have made up my mind. If the Crown Princess continues to be stubborn, she will definitely be punished by God. Even if there is a divine punishment, I will still be with her. Fan Kinjao opened his eyes and saw the familiar face of Bailey Fengming. Bailey Fengming saw Fan Kinjao waking up and quickly hugged him in his arms. How is it, but you still feel uncomfortable somewhere? When she felt the warmth of Bailey Fengming covering her cold body bit by bit, Fan Kinjao realized that she had really woken up. Where is this place? As soon as she opened her mouth, she realized that her voice was extremely hoarse. Look. Bailey Fengming put the already warm tea to Fan Kinjao's lips and fed her to drink it little by little. You fainted at Hyoguo Temple. I happened to come to help my mother pray for peace and happiness. I heard that you came here after fainting. Fan Kinjao drank some water and his throat felt much better. I just heard you talking to Master Xingyun. What are you talking about? Bailey Fengming was stunned for a moment, then smiled helplessly and said, This is the first time I heard that you can still dream when you are in a coma. There are only you and me in this room all the time. Where is Master Xingyun? Hearing this, Fan Kinjao stood up in confusion and looked around. Sure enough, there was no one else in the room. Perhaps she really heard wrong just now. I haven't asked you yet, why did you come to Hyoguo Temple? Seeing that Fan Kinjao still looked weak, Bailey Fengming hugged him in his arms again. Fan Kinjao looked at Bailey Fengming in front of him. His still hazy consciousness finally came to his senses. He grabbed Bailey Fengming's lapel and asked, Do you know what the Emperor is doing now? Bailey Fengming was stunned. What do you know? Fan Kinjao kept tightening his fingers on the hem of his clothes, and the veins on the back of his hands bulged. He is making elixirs. Using living people to make elixirs. Since ancient times, all emperors have pursued immortality, so there has always been a shortage of alchemists and warlocks in the palaces of various countries, in order to develop elixirs of immortality for emperors. But immortality is just a luxury wish. As the world goes by, the emperors of various countries also know that this is impossible to achieve. In addition, the manpower and material resources spent on raising a group of warlocks to refine elixirs are incalculable. Gradually, there is no more sorcerer in the palace. Fan Kinjao knew that the emperor had been thinking about the taste of Lingxia pills, but she thought that as long as she didn't mention it again, the emperor would give up her hope. But who would have thought that the emperor would be so crazy, and he would start looking for someone to make elixirs secretly? The person who is secretly helping the emperor run around is none other than Bailey Rongs. Fan Kinjao handed the letter left by Pan Yulo to Bailey Fengming. I have always thought that Pan Yulo's death was strange. I didn't expect that Pan Yulo, who accidentally spied on this matter, had already thought that he was not going to die soon, so he left this letter for me specifically at Hyoguo Temple. This letter clearly states that the children who disappeared in the two cities were all taken away to make alchemy. Pan Yulo also accidentally learned about this from the conversation between Yunyu and concubine Yu. Later, she fancifully thought that as long as she kept this secret, Bailey Rongs would have to dote on her and bow to her, but instead it led to death. Fan Kinjao knew that Pan Yulo might not believe everything he said, but the facts were right in front of him. If Bailey Rongs hadn't privately connived and helped the emperor refine the elixir, the emperor would never have favored Bailey Rongs overtly or covertly. In this case, it makes sense why Tang Juwei appeared next to the emperor. As the king of a country and the leader of all people, he is doing harmful things in private. Such an emperor is simply a shame to Ziliang. We must find a way to end this matter completely, otherwise more and more people will pay their lives for it. Fan Qinjiao looked at Bailey Fengming and said, perhaps Pan Yulu wrote this because she wanted to use me to avenge her, but I think the credibility of this matter is very high, and it needs to be carefully verified. Bailey Fengming gently patted Fan Qinjiao's thin back. Everything written above is true. Fan Qinjiao was stunned. What did you say? Bailey Fengming smiled bitterly, because I already knew it. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 914. Chapter 914, Beasts are engraved in the bones. Bailey Fengming was in poor health when she was a child. The queen did not dare to say anything, so she could only secretly drag Ji Hongliao to seek medical advice. However, the recovery of the body did not happen overnight, and at that time Bailey Fengming was not affected by the disease. Chong, even if Ji Hongliao could prescribe the medicine, the precious medicinal materials in the palace would not be used on Bailey Fengming. The empress was so ill that she sought medical treatment, so she collected a lot of heretical medical books to see if she could find any useful methods. It was at that time that Bailey Fengming saw the method of using living people to make elixirs from the queen. Later, Ji Hongliao had a big quarrel with the queen because of this matter, without even caring about his identity. At the risk of being beheaded, Ji Hongliao scolded the queen bloody. Although the words are unpleasant to hear, they are not without truth. It was exactly like this that the queen gave up her inappropriate thoughts. Because the incident was so fresh in his memory at the time, when Bailey Fengming heard that a child was missing, the first thing he thought of was the book he saw at the queen's house. The body of a living person is a treasure. Its qi is feminine and soft. Boys and girls have not yet grown up, and their bodies are pure. Virgins have a flexible mind and are good at thinking, so they are good at gathering spiritual energy at the top, so the brain should be taken. A child's heart is born strong, and the spiritual energy gathers there. This is why I picked his heart. Looking at the above, we should use the blood as the guide, the bones as the square, and only with sincerity can we achieve great success. Even now, Bailey Fengming clearly remembers the process of writing in the book. At that time, he thought it was extremely ridiculous. He never thought that one day this joke would turn into a cruel reality. Just because he wanted to find out, it didn't happen overnight. After Bailey Fengming went to the two cities, and when he couldn't find any clues about the missing children, he roughly guessed the mastermind behind it. Everything that has been done, no matter how clean it is, has traces. The only reason why nothing can be found is not that the hands and feet of the person who did the work were too clean, but that someone helped erase the traces. Bailey Fengming, he said with a wry smile. Fan Qinjiao looked at Bailey Fengming and asked, so you deliberately delayed the two cities in order to conduct a secret investigation? Bailey Fengming nodded. He asked Lin Yi to contact the Qinkai school secretly and conduct investigations according to his own ideas. Sure enough, he found something. I wanted to find an opportunity to talk to you about this some time ago, but I didn't find the opportunity. Just looking at Fan Qinjiao in front of her, Bailey Fengming didn't know what to say to keep her calm. Where is the thing? Take me to see it. Fan Qinjiao saw Bailey Fengming's thoughts. Since she didn't know how to express it, she went to see it herself. You are just too stubborn. Bailey Fengming said this, but he still bent down and put on her shoes himself, and took her hand and left the Hyuguo temple together. He knew that even if he told the truth, she still had to see it with her own eyes. He was unwilling to stop her, but he was willing to go with her. Lin Yi had been waiting outside for a long time. The two of them walked out and quickly opened the car door, Your Highness, Crown Princess. Bailey Fengming helped Fan Qinjiao get into the carriage and gave the order, go to the barren mountains 30 miles outside the city. Why didn't Lin Yi know what that place meant? To be honest, that place was so evil that even he, a man, didn't want to go there again. But when faced with His Highness's order, he could do nothing but turn the horse's head. Fan Qinjiao listened to Bailey Fengming's instructions, looked at him and said, "Is your place near the main city?" I was also surprised when I checked outside the main city. Although the most dangerous place is the safest. But such a risky move does not seem to be the character of the third emperor brother. I am afraid there is someone guiding him behind his back. Bailey Fengming nodded, sat down next to her and held her in his arms. Inside. Even though the carriage was lit with some silver charcoal, her face was still extremely pale. Exalted person? Who else can be a master? Of course it's Tang Juwei. Fan Qinjiao smiled coldly. When the medicinal materials were burned in the Yu family's shop, I felt strange. Now that I think about it, I am afraid that everyone around the third prince is surrounding this matter. Princess Yunyu is even more generous, even the head of the medicine master pavilion was moved out. This act of bringing people around him to kneel and lick him is more and more like Bailey Rong's style in the previous life. Fan Qinjiao remembered that when the emperor in the previous life was terminally ill, Bailey Rongs devoted all his money and behaved like a filial son, stealing the limelight in front of the emperor. Even later, the emperor heard that eating human flesh and drinking human blood could delay the disease. Regarding lifespan, Bailey Rongs also followed the instructions. In fact, Fan Qinjiao should have thought of it a long time ago. In his last life, he could stuff human blood and human flesh into his mouth. What's so strange about using living people to make elixirs in this life? The word animal is never superficial, but is engraved in one's bones. Bailey Fengming saw Fan Qinjiao's face getting worse and worse, and knew that he was really angry. He said softly, "Nothing happened to the missing children in the main city. It's just that they need a suitable opportunity to show up." Fan Qinjiao was stunned. "Aren't you going to bluff me?" Bailey Fengming smiled and rubbed her cheek, trying to make her complexion rosier. "Why have I ever fooled you?" At that time, Bailey Fengming was in the two cities. After learning that something happened in the main city, he asked Xiaoxian to return to the city secretly to investigate. This way, he could follow the clues and find the place outside the city. The reason why that place is now abandoned is precisely because of the fire that Xiaoxian set. At that time, the people inside were only focused on escaping for their own lives and could not care about others. Xiaoxian took the opportunity to secretly take away all the boys and girls. "Come out." Fan Qinjiao calmed down. If this is really the case, it can be said to be a blessing among misfortunes. At this moment, the carriage that had been moving forward stopped. Before Fan Qinjiao got off the carriage, she smelled the smell of something burning, which showed how powerful the fire was. When she got off the carriage, she saw that the foot of the barren mountain in front of her had long been covered by dead leaves. The traces have also been cleaned up. This shows how good those people were at hiding at that time. Even if it is a burned-out place, all traces can be hidden. "Be careful where you step." Bailey Fengming pulled Fan Qinjiao and moved closer to the foot of the mountain. Even if Xiaoxian was holding a fire in front of him, he couldn't illuminate the surrounding darkness at all. After almost a stick of incense, Fan Qinjiao followed Bailey Fengming and stood at a certain place at the foot of the mountain. As Xiaoxian pushed aside the dead leaves and weeds in front of him, a figure was suddenly revealed inside. Cave. A gust of wind blew in my face, filled with a vomiting smell. Fan Qinjiao knew that it was the smell of rotting corpses and blood intertwined. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 915. Chapter 915. Do you believe me? Xiaoxian was so sick that he almost vomited. In the blink of an eye, he saw that Fan Kinjao was fine, and he was still a little shocked. Fortunately, he had not seen the crown princess's ability before, even stepping on someone's belly. If you can do this, what does it matter now? So, for some blows, you get used to them with time. The cave was very deep. Fan Kinjao and Bailey Fengming walked all the way in and estimated that they walked for a while before reaching the deepest part of the cave. At the same time, the vision in front of me suddenly became clear. Although it has been burned, you can still clearly see the elixirs scattered on the ground, as well as various burnt equipment and alchemy cauldrons. This is obviously a Taoist temple built at the bottom of the mountain. Bailey Fengming knew that Fan Kinjao wanted to check carefully, so he looked at Xiaoxian. Xiaoxian understood the idea and quickly took out a few more fire sticks from his arms. After lighting them, he inserted them into the cracks in the mountain inside the Taoist temple. Although it did not last longer than the burning time of the torch, it was enough to watch the Taoist temple in a circle. As the entire Taoist temple was illuminated by the fire, some small holes hidden inside were also revealed. Fan Kinjao walked in with her skirt in hand, and her face, which was not very good looking, became worse and worse. There are many small openings inside. Except for a few that are used to hold other alchemy cauldrons, the rest are all covered with ashes. As Fan Kinjao entered, smoke and dust suddenly rose everywhere. What has so much dust? Of course it's human bones. Fan Kinjao became more frightened and colder as she watched. She thought that the emperor in the previous life who drank human blood and ate human flesh had reached the extreme of evil. She never expected that there would be no end to human evil. The elixir made by countless children is really that delicious? It's true that I'm not afraid of being choked to death. Xiaoxian had never seen Fan Kinjao so angry before, so he quickly said, "It's all because of the incompetence of my subordinates. If we could have tracked this down earlier, so many innocent children would not have died." Fan Kinjao knew that Xiaoxian could not be blamed for this. He narrowed his eyes slightly and said, "Beasts have no humanity to speak of. So what if you found this place in advance? It's not the same as it is now. Even if they abandon this place, they will still find a new place to continue committing crimes." Xiaoxian. It's over, the crown princess is really so angry that she has lost her mind. Otherwise, who would the beast be scolding? Other than the one in the palace, Xiaoxian really couldn't think of anyone else. Fan Kinjao was really furious and his clenched fists had veins bulging out. Bailey Fengming reached out and held her hand. He could also feel the uncontrollable trembling in her body. Now that things have happened, we still have to think of countermeasures quickly. Let's go out. The air here is not good. Fan Kinjao looked at Bailey Fengming's dark eyes and finally calmed down. He nodded. Before leaving, he took out a handkerchief from his arms and carefully wrapped the 2 pills on the ground in it. He followed Bailey Fengming on the carriage back to the city. Bailey Fengming looked at her cautious movements and breathed a sigh of relief. He was really afraid that something would happen to her because of her anger. Sitting on the carriage, Fan Kinjao suppressed the anger in his heart, and his rationality gradually returned to his brain. He looked at Bailey Fengming and said, "After killing so many people, the pills refined are definitely not 1 or 2. I'm afraid the emperor has already tasted the sweetness. If this matter cannot be cured quickly, I don't know how many innocent lives will be lost. On the day when the emperor really goes crazy, it will be difficult to control him even if the gods come down to earth. My father has always been suspicious. After this Taoist temple burned down, I thought it would sound the alarm for my father. Unexpectedly, in order to continue to use elixirs to contain and please my father, the third emperor brother encouraged him to secretly build it elsewhere. Other Taoist temples. Fan Kinjao felt that she was still naive and that the emperor could no longer control himself before he went crazy. "Have you found out where the new Taoist temple is?" Bailey Fengming said softly, "I only know that it is near the palace. This is also a difficult issue now. The palace is no better than other places. It is heavily guarded. In addition, the emperor deliberately hides the Taoist temple. I don't know how many eyes and troops have been deployed secretly. Once the Kinkai school is caught by the opponent, it will inevitably affect the whole body. Fan Qinjiao understands Bailey Fengming's concerns, but if he wants to fundamentally stop this matter, he can only expose it. Bailey Fengming saw what Fan Qinjiao was thinking. It's not difficult to expose, but I'm afraid that my father will be partial and protect the three emperor brothers. If something happens to Bailey wrongs, who can continue to make elixirs for the emperor? Fan Qinjiao narrowed his eyes slightly and said, then find a way to prevent the emperor from being partial. If this matter wants to be settled, it's not something you or I can stop. I'm afraid more people will have to be involved. Ayao, do you trust me? Bailey Fengming held Fan Qinjiao's hand. Looking into her eyes. Involving more people means putting more people at risk. It was difficult for him to reach out to the palace, but if Hua Yaoding and Prince Heshuo came forward, the matter would be solved. The emperor wanted to hide the Taoist temple, so he had to secretly find heavy troops to guard it. Even though Prince Heshuo and Hua Yaoding were now empty-handed in the main city, their prestige in the army was unmatched. This is also the reason why Bailey Fengming didn't tell Fan Qinjiao at the beginning. Bailey Fengming knew very well what his family meant to Fan Qinjiao, and he knew even better that she was also very wary now. He didn't know if he was worth all her efforts to believe. Actually, the Hua family has been standing with Bailey Fengming for a long time. One is prosperous and both are prosperous, one is deprived and both are deprived. Even if Bailey Fengming doesn't ask, will the Hua family be fine if something happens to Bailey Fengming? But Bailey Fengming still asked. Fan Qinjiao knew that he was giving her a chance to repent. As long as she shakes her head, with Bailey Fengming's methods, there are many ways to get the Hua family out of this incident. But Fan Qinjiao said, wait for my news. She didn't say whether she believed it or not, but this sentence was more powerful than the word believe. Waiting for news from her. No hesitation, no shrinking. Because originally, she was going to advance and retreat with him. Moreover, Fan Qinjiao believes that neither his maternal grandfather nor his adoptive father are people who give up in spite of difficulties. Okay, Bailey Fengming smiled. In fact, even if she really cowered, he could still find out where the new Taoist temple was, but it would just take more time. But she agreed without even thinking about it. Of course Fan Qinjiao knew what it meant for Bailey Fengming to consider her, so as soon as he returned to the western suburbs mansion, he went directly to the main courtyard. Tao Yuxian was still recovering from his injuries during this period. He took advantage of the good air to go out and walk around. When he saw Fan Qinjiao coming in, he asked, why are you here at this time? Suddenly I remembered something and wanted to ask my grandma. Is grandpa here? Fan Qinjiao smiled and looked at her grandma's complexion. She had indeed recovered a lot, however, the matter was not yet clear now. She really didn't want her grandma to be here at this time. Followed by on tenterhooks. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 916. Chapter 916. Too confused. Tao Yuxian looked at Fan Qinjiao's late-night visit and felt that there was something important. He quickly pointed in the direction of the study and said, your grandfather is discussing matters with Prince Heshuo in the study at the moment. Just go over there. Is your adoptive father here? This saves trouble. Fan Qinjiao looked in the direction of the study and nodded, but when he looked away, he did not leave immediately. Instead, he took the initiative to take his grandmother's arm from Aunt He's hand and walked with her in the yard. Tao Yuxian was stunned. Didn't you say something happened? No matter how big the deal is, it's not as important as staying with Grandma, Fan Kinjao said with a playful wink. Hearing this, not to mention Tao Yuxian, even Grandma He beside him was amused. The young lady is obviously much more mature than any other young lady in the house. To be able to act like this and say such words now is clearly to please the old lady. This kind of care is really touching. Tao Yuxian shook his head helplessly, looked at Fan Kinjao with a smile and said, "You are so old, but you are still like a child." Fan Kinjao took advantage of the situation and snuggled up to her grandmother. No matter how old they are all grandma's children. Tao Yuxian. Is this mouth smeared with honey? But looking at Fan Kinjao clinging to his side, Tao Yuxian's heart finally calmed down. If Xiao Kinjao really came to the main courtyard to find someone in an emergency, there would be no time to make her happy. By the way, Sister Shan woke up during the day. When she heard that her mother was gone, she cried so hard that she fainted. This child had a hard life, and a mother like that is always thinking about her when talking about Cao Lishan, Tao Yuxian sighed. I'm obviously more angry. Fan Kinjao knew that her grandmother wanted to make up for it, so she thought for a while and said, speaking of which, Mu Yan is currently busy with the marriage between Luo Yuoluo and Peng Zheng. I heard that the matchmaker he found is pretty good. If grandma doesn't worry, I'll pass it on. Let the matchmaker come to the house in a few days. As long as we are willing to spend money, we can always find a suitable family for cousin Lishan. Tao Yuxian didn't expect that Yu Luo and Peng Jing were about to have a good thing, so he quickly asked Aunt He to help write it down, and went to add something to Yu Luo when he came back. After finishing the instructions, he nodded and said, "This idea is not bad, just follow this, just do what you say." The Cao family originally wanted Cao Lishan to come to the main city to propose marriage. Although there were some interruptions, things that needed to be done still had to be done. Even if the Cao family didn't want to take care of it, the Hua family still had to take care of it. We couldn't really let Cao Lishan stay in the flower house and become an old girl. Tao Yuxian talked to Fan Kinjao for a while, and he was obviously a little tired. Fan Kinjao personally helped his grandmother into the house and lay down, then turned and went out to the study. In the study, Hua Yaoding was chatting with Prince Heshuo. When he heard that Fan Kinjao was coming, he was stunned. When he came to his senses, he quickly opened the door and took Fan Kinjao in person. "Come in." As soon as Prince Heshuo saw Fan Kinjao, he became very energetic. Although he didn't watch this child grow up, he had watched it for a few years. He knew the rules and had a sense of propriety. Now that he was able to come here at this time, I'm afraid there was something big going on. But what happened? Hua Yaoding went straight to the point. His grandson knew very well that if something hadn't happened, how could she have done such an unmeasured thing? Since Fan Kinjao was here, he had no intention of hiding anything. Seeing that his adoptive father and grandfather were all listening, he wanted to tell her carefully about the peace and blessing that Pan Yulo left for her, as well as the details of going to the Taoist temple with Bailey Fengming today. Said it again. Heshuo County Prince. Hua Yaoding. Even though the two of them were prepared, they were still stunned by the giant melon falling from the sky. After regaining consciousness, both Prince Heshuo and Hua Yaoding stood up from their chairs. Give gas. How can people be calm when they treat people's lives like a child's play? Especially since that person is the emperor. What does the emperor mean? The 9-5 Lord, the belief of the people of Ziliang, is such a person who is worshipped by thousands of people, but because of his own selfish interests, he extends his claws to the people who trust him the most. As long as he thinks of the people in the alleys of the main city who are going to be stupid for the rest of their lives, whether it is Hua Yaoding or Prince Heshuo, they cannot calm down for a long time. So, the emperor connived at the affairs of the common people in the alley, Prince Heshuo asked. Fan Kinjao nodded, I'm afraid that's the case. It was precisely because Bailey Rongs understood that the emperor was eager for success in the matter of immortality that he dared to try to throw dirty water on Bailey Fengming in the name of finding a new furnace for the emperor. So what if the emperor knew about it after the fact? Didn't he want to help Bailey Rongs hide the matter? After all, he still hopes that Bailey Rongs will continue to do sneaky things for him. I'm afraid that the people who attacked my adoptive father and grandfather were also related to the third prince. No matter what Fan Kinjao thought about when his grandfather and adoptive father were injured, there were still some things he couldn't figure out. But if he connected the matter with Bailey Rongs, everything would make sense. Something happened in the main city, and he sent people to attack his grandfather and adoptive father. If his real grandfather and adoptive father did not survive, Bailey Rongs would pour the dirty water of the main city on Bailey Fengming, and then Bailey Fengming would. What was lost was not only the support of the people, but also the two right-hand men of his adoptive father and grandfather. From the very beginning, Bailey Rongs planned to fundamentally disintegrate Bailey Fengming. Facing these sudden truths, Hua Yaoding and Prince Heshuo looked extremely ugly. Your worldview has collapsed, how can you not look ugly? I didn't expect that the emperor could be so confused. Prince Heshuo sighed heavily. Fan Kinjao said, it's true that the emperor is confused, and it's true that the three princes are helping the emperor to do evil. No matter how much the emperor wants to follow these heretical ways, how could he have fallen into this without the help of others? Prince Heshuo sighed heavily and was so worried that he couldn't even speak. The third prince was confused because he wanted to reach the top. He could still say he was young and frivolous, but what was the emperor doing? He was ignoring his own identity and the lives of the people of Ziliang. You are really confused. Hua Yaoding looked at Fan Kinjao and asked, how does the prince want to deal with this matter? Fan Kinjao did not hide anything from his grandfather and adoptive father. After telling him again about Bailey Fengming burning down the Taoist temple outside the city, he paused and said, now the prince's people have traced the Taoist temple is near the palace, but it is heavily guarded. If you want to continue to investigate, you will need the help of your grandfather and adoptive father. Hearing this, Prince Heshuo and Hua Yaoding looked at each other. After a long while, Prince Heshuo asked, so what the prince means? Fan Kinjao said, if we want to eradicate the root cause, we must expose this matter. As soon as these words came out, not to mention Prince Heshuo, even Hua Yaoding's chest jumped heavily. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 917. Chapter 917. Too wise and calm. It would be fine if we just fight alone with the third prince. Since the power of the prince and the third prince gradually became clear, they have often fought each other in private. But after all, the emperor is still here. Even if there is a winner or lose in the fight, he will be exhausted. It's just a hamstring injury. But now this matter. The one implicated is the emperor. To put it bluntly, it is not only the third prince who is fighting, but also the emperor. No matter how stupid the emperor is, he is still the emperor of Ziliang. At first, the Hua family just made the emperor suspicious, and all the men in the family were killed. This time, they want to stand up to the emperor. On the opposite side, if one is not careful, it will be destroyed forever. Prince Heshuo looked at Fan Kinjao and wanted to ask, but there was another way. However, when the words reached his lips, he couldn't say a word and swallowed it back in his stomach. Does the prince know that this trip is dangerous? If there is another way, who is willing to risk his life? The third prince is indeed hateful, but now the emperor has tasted the sweetness. Even if they can really quietly make the third prince stop doing evil, can the emperor really let it go? How can it be? Evidently everyone has tasted the sweetness. So both Hua Yaoding and Prince Heshuo knew very well that if they really wanted to stop letting innocent people pay their lives, solving the problem at its root was the key. And this root is naturally the emperor. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is really brave. Prince Heshuo didn't know what to say. Although he had known for a long time that the Crown Prince had always been hiding his edge, he really dared to say that he was fighting against the Emperor. Looking at Ziliang, he could find how many come out. Fan Qinjiao knew what Prince Heshuo was worried about, and said softly, "This matter is said to be an expose, but how to expose it and how to expose it requires long-term planning, but no matter what, the key is to grasp the evidence of the crime first. There is no evidence, and everything you say is empty talk." Fan Qinjiao intends to expose, but she has no intention of actually fighting the emperor to the death. No matter how much she hates the stupid and unscrupulous emperor in her heart, she will never risk everyone's life for such a person. It's just that it's too early to say this now. You have to eat your meals one bite at a time. Xiao Qinjiao is right, let's do what we do first, Hua Yaoding said, finally deciding the matter. Although this is risky, if you want to achieve great things in this world, which one can't be achieved by stepping on the tip of a knife and licking blood? If he doesn't even believe in his own granddaughter, who can he believe in? Besides, this matter also involves the lives of innocent children in Ziliang, so it cannot be delayed any longer. Seeing this, Fan Qinjiao carefully analyzed the current situation with his grandfather and adoptive father, as well as the various possibilities once exposed. He always had to worry about things in advance in order to be prepared. The Prince of Heshuo County has long known that Fan Qinjiao is a calm and dignified person, but he did not expect that he could be so calm and mature. Even if he faced life and death without blinking an eye, he could still calmly analyze the situation. Had Fan Qinjiao not stood clearly in front of him, he would have felt that the person he was talking to was an old man who was strategizing. When Prince Heshuo returned to his mansion, he went directly to Prince Qingchuan's yard under the full moon above his head, lit a lamp and boiled oil to check his son's homework. Prince Qingchuan is young, but he has never been sloppy in his homework. When he saw his father coming to check his homework in person, he quickly got up from the bed and waited for his father's exam. The Princess of Heshuo County heard the commotion and rushed over. She saw that the Princess of Heshuo County was taking the test seriously and Prince Qingchuan was answering the questions seriously. Facing such a strange scene, Princess Heshuo didn't know what to say. "It's so late at night, why are you so crazy?" After finishing his son's homework for the school entrance examination, Prince Heshuo walked out of the house with satisfaction. He looked at the lady waiting in the yard and said, "What did that kid from Qinjiao eat when he grew up? Why did he grow up so young? Do you have that kind of courage and wisdom?" Princess of Heshuo County. "It turns out that I was stimulated. That child from Qinjiao has seen too many things since she was a child. Children who have had a hard life have long been in charge. Speaking of which, she is the most distressing." Princess Heshuo County sighed. Prince Heshuo frowned. "God is always fair. The more hardship you endure, the more thoughtful you will be. Starting tomorrow, we will give Qingchuan more basic lessons, and we should also hire a martial arts master." The Princess of Heshuo County was speechless. Xiao Qinjiao's city and wisdom can only be learned by studying hard. As the saying goes, the master brings you in, and the cultivation depends on the individual. If your son is not born with that kind of material, even if you invite all the masters in the city, he will not be able to keep up with Xiao Qinjiao's 1000th. Prince Heshuo didn't care about his wife's resentful look. Before going out early the next morning, he sent someone to call in the more famous martial arts masters in the imperial city. Hua Yaoding also left early. No matter how disgusted he was with the emperor's selfishness and cruelty, he still had to go to court. However, he thought about going to Heshuo County Prince's mansion to discuss matters before leaving. "I specifically told Auntie that she didn't have to wait for him to eat today." Fan Qinjiao had already guessed that her grandfather would be extremely busy today, so as soon as her grandfather left the house, she got up and planned to go to the main courtyard to have breakfast with her grandmother. Unexpectedly, as soon as she finished washing, Ningan hurriedly ran in the door and said, "The lady is not good, the old lady has a headache again." After hearing this, Fan Kinjao took his medicine box and went out. Grandma is getting older. Even if the fall from the mountain didn't hurt her life, it won't be a day to really recuperate her body and bones. In the main courtyard, the daughters-in-law of each room came after hearing the news. Cao Lishan, who had not seen her for many days, was kneeling beside Tao Yuxian's bed, holding Tao Yuxian's hand and crying bitterly. "It's all my fault, I shouldn't have mentioned what happened that day to you again. Don't let anything happen to you, otherwise I really won't be able to survive." As soon as she saw Fan Kinjao entering the door, Cao Lishan turned around and knelt in front of Fan Kinjao and admitted her mistake. "It was my fault. I originally wanted to ask my aunt what happened that day and why. My mother is dead, I didn't expect my great-aunt to suddenly faint from a headache." In fact, even if Cao Lishan didn't say anything, Fan Kinjao was able to diagnose and treat her. Grandma fainted because of depression. Although the problem was not serious, Fan Kinjao's face naturally turned cold when he saw his grandmother's pale face. "The matter has already passed, why do you keep mentioning it over and over again?" Could it be that Cao Lishan really couldn't see that her grandmother was also feeling guilty about what happened that day? End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 918. Chapter 918. Something happened in Kingnanzai. Cao Lishan looked at Fan Kinjao's face and started sobbing even more. "Cousin Kinjao, I really just want to ask my aunt how my mother died and why she died. I didn't expect that my great-aunt would suddenly faint. It's all my fault. It's my fault." The daughters-in-law of each house standing in the house looked at Cao Lishan, who was crying so hard that she could hardly speak. Although she felt that Cao Lishan was indeed a little more ignorant, she could not say a single word of blame. It is human nature for him to be a child and lose his mother all of a sudden. He may not be able to accept it for a while. Since Cousin Lishan knows that the person is dead, she should calmly recognize the reality. Even if Cousin Lishan really can't accept the fact that her mother is dead, she can just hide in the house and cry. Why bother to make a fuss in front of my grandmother? As soon as Fan Kinjao opened his mouth, everyone's heart skipped a beat. This is a bit harsh to say. Fan Kinjao looked at Cao Lishan and said, "It is human nature for Cousin Lishan to be sad. I can understand it. My grandmother was also worried about Cousin Lishan, so she left Cousin Lishan in the Hua family. But people cannot be resurrected after death. Cousin Lishan understands this simple truth. In this case, why would Cousin Lishan bother a living person for a dead person? Could it be that before Cousin Lishan came, she never thought that her grandmother would be sad because of this? Or is it that Cousin Lishan only cares about her own comfort and has not considered her grandmother's feelings at all?" Fan Kinjao's words were still harsh, but the people present could no longer blame Fan Kinjao. Xiao Kinjao is right. Although Cao Lishan is pitiful, if she really cares about her mother-in-law, how could she come here so early in the morning to cause trouble? In the final analysis, it's not that I don't care about my mother-in-law at all. The daughters-in-law in each room looked at Cao Lishan kneeling on the ground, and the pity in their eyes faded a lot. It is true that they pity Cao Lishan, but they are all from the flower family. Cao Lishan probably didn't expect Fan Kinjao to speak so directly. She looked at Fan Kinjao blankly, and even the tears in her eyes were stuck with her. Fan Kinjao got up and wrote the prescription, leaving it to Aunt He to cook. After feeding his grandmother the medicine himself, he got up and left the main courtyard. Just at this time, a servant came into the yard bringing breakfast. Cao Lishan, who was still in the room, then walked out. Even though her eyes were still red and swollen, she took the food basket on her own initiative. After carefully asking the servants who brought the food what dishes they had, she asked again. The man replaced some of the meat dishes with light side dishes, and then walked back into the house. When the daughters-in-law in each house saw this, they didn't say anything, but their stiff expressions obviously softened a bit. After all, Cao Lishan was still a child, and it was normal for her to do something wrong even if she was careless. When Ningyan saw his young lady coming out, she quickly opened the shawl in her hand and said in a low voice, "I didn't expect Miss Lishan Biao to be so caring and caring." This means that the old lady's love for her was not in vain. It's best if it comes from the sincerity. Fan Kinjao didn't know how long it had been since Cao Lishan woke up, but now that she could walk around Hua's house so freely, it showed that she already knew that her grandmother had left her behind. Cao Lishan grew up in the Cao family, so she didn't know how cruel and cold-hearted the Cao family was. Now, even if she wants to find a reliable husband's family, she should please her grandmother. "How are the preparations for Yu Luo and Peng Jing's marriage?" asked Qing Qinjian. Ningyan became interested when talking about this. "Miss has been very busy these days. Yu Luo's clothes are all ready. I took the time to take a look at them a few days ago, but they are so beautiful." Fan Kinjao didn't expect Mu Yan's actions to be so fast. Since the wedding ceremony was done, it meant that they were about to get married. Back in the yard, Fan Kinjao took the things he had prepared in advance from Nanny Su, and called Ningtian and Langya together before getting on the carriage heading to Qingnanzai. The main city was very lively at noon. After more than half a year passed, the people had gradually come out of the shadow of the 15th. Ninghan rarely went out with Ningtian, but now she was extremely excited. She dragged her sister along and talked non-stop. Even when she saw people making clay figurines on the street, they could talk for a long time. Ningtian has a cold temper, but he still loves his only sister very much. When he saw Ningyan talking about the clay figurine, he turned to look at the young lady sitting beside her. Fan Kinjao thought that he had plenty of time today, so he nodded in acquiescence. It was from this nod that nothing in the carriage was broken. As long as Ninghan mentioned it, all kinds of gadgets, from clay figurines to sweet-scented osmanthus cakes, would pile up on the carriage in the blink of an eye. In the end, even Lanja got involved and helped Ningtian buy and buy together. Faced with such a scene, Ningyan was frightened. She was afraid that if she bought her sister's property, it would be part of the dowry for her future marriage, so she quickly covered her mouth, not daring to make any more noise. Looking at Ningtian's silly look, Ningtian and Lanja, who had always been indifferent to mood and anger, both showed faint smiles. Fan Kinjao saw them happy and laughed too. It is not too far from the mansion in the western suburbs to Qingnanzai. It takes about a stick of incense and you can see the plaque of Qingnanzai while sitting on the carriage. It's just that right now, there are people outside the Qingnanzai door, and it's dark and noisy. Ningyan helped her young lady get out of the carriage and asked curiously, "Why is business so good today?" Although Ningtian and Lanja didn't speak, they obviously tensed up their bodies. As Fan Kinjao stepped out of the carriage, the two of them quietly moved to the left and right to protect Fan Kinjao. Seeing this, the smile on Ningyan's face gradually disappeared. "You need to find out what happened," Fan Kinjao ordered Ningtian. "The business of Qingnanzai is good, but what they sell is not oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar. Even if they have recently launched new products, because the prices of the new products are very high, they usually attract ladies and gentlemen from well-known families in the main city." "Lady. Since he is a person with status, how can he come to queue in person?" Moreover, Fan Qingyuan looked at them from a distance. Those standing at the entrance of Qingnanzai did not look like the nobles and celebrities in the main city. It should be said that they were not even servants of Jiaomen Mansion. Just as Fan Kinjao was thinking about it, he saw Ningtian walking back and lowering his voice, "Miss, something happened in Qingnanzai." Ningyan's heart skipped a beat when she heard this. Only then did she realize that the people surrounding the Qingnanzai gate were all nearby people watching the excitement. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 919. Chapter 919 is completely unreasonable. There are actually dozens of people standing outside Kingnanzai now, and they are all mixed. Although Ningtian couldn't find out how carefully, he still got a rough idea. It seems that someone used something from Kingnanzai to ruin his face, and now he went back to Kingnanzai to ask for an explanation. While listening to Ninggan's words, Fan Kinjao led people across the street and crowded in the crowd with other people watching the excitement. Sure enough, he saw a middle-aged woman lying at the door of Kingnanzai. Sappa rolled around. Look at my face, I made it like this just because I used your stuff. I thought your Kingnanzai's stuff must be worth the money because it's so expensive, but I didn't expect that your Kingnanzai wanted it at all. You are seeking wealth and murder, the woman said, sitting up and lifting her hair that was scattered on her cheeks towards the people around her. Under the sun, the ulcers on half of the face were extremely obvious, and the cheekbones were the most serious. They had ulcerated a hole, and streams of oil were flowing down along with bloodshot threads. Such a disgusting scene frightened the people around. Even Ningtian and Lanja frowned silently, not to mention Ninggan, who almost vomited. Fan Kinjao stared at the ulcers on the woman's face carefully. If you look at it this way, it does seem like something was used to cause the skin ulcers, but she knew what Kingnanzai prepared, precisely because she had to take care of everything. People who benefit from it should be extremely careful every time they choose medicinal materials. Even though the shop has now been handed over to Mu Yan, every time he launches a new product, Mu Yan will send the prescription to Fan Kinjao for transportation, so Fan Kinjao is very sure that there is nothing wrong with their things. In this case, then the problem will only be people. At this time, Mu Yan was standing at the door of Kingnanzai. He also saw that the woman's face seemed to have been corroded by something, but she was originally a person who didn't like to talk. Now faced with the woman's behavior, he clenched his fists nervously, unable to say a word. Yu Latong said, our Qingnang restaurant has been open in the main city for such a long time. If there is a problem, it will not be delayed until today. This sister insists that she used things from our Qingnang restaurant. I don't know. Maybe name it. The woman sat cross-legged on the ground, looked up at the moonlight and said, I saved a lot of money and bought a lot of things from your Kingnanzai. How do I know what the problem is? In my opinion, it is basically your Kingnanzai. There is something wrong with everything in Nangzai. Yuolodo said without changing her expression, you said there was something wrong with the things in our Kingnanzai, but you couldn't tell us what they were used for. Doesn't this sister find it funny? The woman was stunned and speechless for a while. Yuolodo took the opportunity to look at the people around him and said, we have Kingnanzao in the main city, and we have bought tens of thousands of things. If there is really a problem, who will be the one to be harassed today? Come on, which high-ranking mansion in the main city will let us go? This is true. Who doesn't know that Kingnanzai has the most wealthy guests? If there was really something wrong with the goods, how could it still be open today? Moreover, I heard that the new products launched by Kingnanzai on August 15 had already been snapped up by the ladies in the main city. The woman sitting on the ground saw that the people were looking at her with suspicion, and suddenly rolled up her sleeves. Look carefully, these are all evidence that I used Kingnanzai's things. Who knows, something was added to the product. It was fine when I first started using it, but now it's starting to fester all over my body. Can I still be joking with my own life? The woman's arms were all covered with ulcers. She probably pulled her clothes too much, and a piece of skin was rubbed off to the ground. I started using Kingnanzai's stuff and it was fine. Who knew that something would go wrong if I just started using it? If you don't believe it, just keep using it. You will deserve to die by then, the woman warned, looking at the Baksons around her. You are simply being unreasonable. Yu Luo has never seen such an unreasonable person. The woman raised her hand and pointed at the plaque of Kingnanzai, shouting at the top of her lungs, "Your stuff is poisonous, and now you are calling me unreasonable. I think it's because you want to make money and kill people. Otherwise, why are you here now? You're shopkeeper, you haven't shown up yet. Maybe you're a thief because you feel guilty, right?" Mu Yan was nervous and scared, and her palms were sweaty, but after hearing what the woman said, she still said, "I am the shopkeeper of Kingnanzai. Everything in our shop is clean." "It's not what you said, you are the shopkeeper, right?" Before Mu Yan could finish her words, the woman stood up and rushed towards Mu Yan. "You're not old, but you're quite brave. You can even make this kind of black money. If you don't tell me today, I made it clear and I will report it to the official." Yu Luo and Peng Jing saw that the woman was about to attack Mu Yan, so they quickly stepped forward to stop her. Seeing this, the woman even shouted, "Everyone, come and see, the people from Kingnanzai have killed someone." When Peng Jing and Yu Luo saw this, they quickly let go of their hands, fearing that the woman would continue to slander them. The woman took the opportunity to grab Mu Yan's hair and pulled off a strand of hair, which was so painful that Mu Yan's tears flowed out. Yu Luo held Mu Yan in her arms distressedly, and saw that half of Mu Yan's cheeks were scratched with red marks. Peng Jing looked at the woman and said, "How can you hit someone? What's wrong with me beating people? You Kingnanzai have done something extremely unscrupulous, and you're not allowing me to ask for an explanation. I'm not only going to beat people today, but I'm also going to smash up your shop. Such a shop should be demolished. I have long said that there is something wrong with Kingnanzai's products, but no one believes it. They sell it so expensively and still tamper with it. It's like a pig or a dog." There was constant noise at the entrance of Kingnanzai. Many merchants around saw this and started talking to the woman in the dark. After all, seeing the crowds of guests at Kingnanzai every day, who wouldn't have red eyes with envy? Now that we have finally caught the opportunity, these merchants will naturally want to step in. Ninghan was furious. This is simply unreasonable. Ningtian and Lanjia saw that the woman was still reaching out towards Mu Yan, so they wanted to step forward to help. "They are just here to make trouble, so what's the point?" Fan Qinjiao sneered and stopped Ninggan and Lanjia's actions with his eyes. The woman who came to make trouble this time seems to have no ink in her belly, but every word she speaks is fanning the wind of public opinion. If Ningtian and Lanjia take action again at this time, the dirty water splashed on Kingnanzai will really can't be wiped off. Ninggan gritted her teeth in confusion. Do we still have to accept this loss after being saved? Acknowledge it? How can it be? Fan Qinjiao was not in a good temper yet and allowed others to beat her up and act wantonly in her territory. Pulling a few people around him, Fan Qinjiao lowered his voice and gave instructions quickly and carefully. Since he couldn't solve the problem head-on, it was not impossible to start from the dark. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 920. Chapter 920. If the positive side doesn't work, then the negative side will come. Ninggan really didn't expect that things could be done like this. After hearing what her young lady said, her eyes lit up. She quickly straightened her clothes, squeezed out of the crowd and walked towards Kingnanzai. Yu Luo and Peng Jing saw Ninghan at a glance, and just as they were about to speak, they heard Ninghan say, "I'm here to buy things for our young lady and madam. I brought out all the goods I ordered from you last time bar." Yu Luo and Peng Jing looked at each other. What's going on? It was just like this that the sharp-eyed Peng Jing saw Fan Qinjiao standing in the crowd. Their eyes met and Fan Qinjiao nodded gently. Peng Jing. Understood. Girl, please wait a moment, I'll get it for you right away. Peng Jing ran into the shop in a flash. Mu Yan looked at Ninghan blankly, as if she hadn't reacted yet. Luo put her arms around Mu Yan's shoulders and said in a low voice, "The lady is here, she is watching from a short distance away." As soon as Mu Yan heard that her third sister had arrived, she instantly relaxed. The people around him did not expect that King Nanzai would be in such trouble, and that some people would dare to come to buy things. They all looked at Ningguang curiously. The surrounding merchants said, "Girl, I advise you to leave." "Yeah, didn't you see that all the things in King Nanzai disfigured people? Which family are you a maid from? The master of your family is quite generous, even King Nanzai is like this, and she still dares to let you buy things from her family." When Ningguang heard those merchants trying their best to pour dirty water on Qing Nangzai, she gritted her teeth angrily and said, "How can you find out the name of our master? Besides, since Qing Nangzai opened, so far, our wife and several ladies have been using it, and there has never been any problem. In this world, some people are jealous of others who make more money." The nearby merchants did not expect Ninghan to be so eloquent, and they all choked. Just at this time, Peng Jing came out, holding piles of things in his hands. How could he know what Ningguang wanted, but since Ningguang said it was those goods, the more the better. Ningguang took the things from Peng Jing's hand, turned around and walked out, and happened to pass by the woman who came to make trouble. The woman took the opportunity to stand in front of Ningguang and said, "Girl, look at what I'm wearing. I'm wearing all the stuff from King Nanzai. You'd better not buy it. Be careful that your master is the same as me." Snap dash. Before she could finish her words, Ninghan released her hand and slapped her. It just knocked the woman unconscious. "Why do you still take action? Make action." Ningguang wanted to take out her two front teeth to relieve her hatred. Fan Qinjiao in the crowd didn't expect Ninghan to be so angry, but this slap was a good one, and he was able to get his money back from Mu Yan. At the door of Qing Nangzai, Ninghan looked at the woman with cold eyes and said, "Who are you? You are not worthy of speaking in front of me. However, I am curious that the things in Qing Nangzai are always expensive. Look at what you are wearing. You can buy it, can you afford it?" The woman was stunned and quickly said, "I have been saving money just to buy things from King Nanzai, but I never thought that I would end up like this. Isn't it because you can't use good things and don't have the blessing to enjoy them?" These words hurt my heart. The stabbed woman couldn't breathe for a long time. Ningguang stopped paying attention to the woman, bumped her shoulder and continued walking forward. The woman was hit so hard that she almost fell to the ground. She happened to see something fall out of Ninghan's arms, but Ninghan was walking in a hurry and didn't notice it at all. How could the woman not know that the things in King Nanzai are all good and expensive? She pretended to fall and sat back on the ground, quietly put the things into her sleeves, then looked at King Nanzai and continued to cry, "You King Nanzai are just bullies to many people. Since you King Nanzai don't care about me, I won't leave here." As the woman spoke, she looked at the people around her and said, "Can any kind person help me report it to the official position? We must not let such an inhumane shop stay in the main city for one more day. The people around you don't know how to report to the government, but that doesn't mean the nearby shops really don't." Mu Yan's anxious little face turned white. Once the government was really alarmed, Qing Nangzai would definitely be closed for review. By then, no matter whether Qing Nangzai had something going on or not, its reputation would be damaged. Those who open the door to do business are most afraid of this. At that time, who can still patronize King Nanzai? The woman looked at Mu Yan's anxious look, and a coldness flashed in her eyes. She certainly knew what it would mean once the matter reached the yamen. That's why she continued to cling to King Nanzai. Anyway, they agreed to her. As long as King Nanzai collapses, he will give her a large sum of money. Seeing this, the surrounding merchants all knew that King Nanzai might not be able to survive this time. Some bold merchants were already thinking about how to carve up the regular customers of King Nanzai. "What's up your sleeve?" A woman's voice suddenly sounded among the crowd. Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Sleeves, what sleeves? With everyone in shock, Ning Tian walked out of the crowd and raised his hand to point at the trouble-making woman. Just now, I saw you picking something up from the ground. The woman pinched her sleeves, stiffened her body and said, it's just a gadget. Ning Tian stared into the woman's eyes and continued to ask, since it's a gadget, why don't you dare to show it to everyone? Peng Jing and Yu Luo also looked at the scene in shock, but they knew very well that Ning Tian would never show up easily, and then they thought of Ning Han who had just left. Peng Jing took advantage of the woman's heightened guard, and suddenly rushed over and grabbed the woman's sleeve. The woman was shocked and tried to break free like crazy. What are you doing? Everyone, look at it. The people from King Nanzai killed people. Is there any way for the king to do it? Don't talk nonsense, I just want to see what you are hiding. Peng Jing subconsciously wanted to let go after hearing this. You Qing Nangzai clearly want to kill me and silence me. The woman took the opportunity to withdraw her hand. It was Lang Ya who was standing next to Fan Qinjiao. He picked up a stone on the ground and flicked it in the direction of the woman. Whoosh! The stone hit the woman on the back of her hand without any deviation. Ouch! The woman shivered in pain and instinctively threw her arm. At the same time, something fell from the woman's sleeve to the ground. Everyone was stunned when they looked at that thing. They all widened their eyes to look carefully at what it was. Peng Jing stood close and reacted the fastest. He immediately picked up the thing and shouted, isn't this the hair oil our King Nanzai launched last season? End of this chapter.